Cayman,
The voice,
the heart,
the soul of the Cayman Islands.
I'm Radio Cayman now goes live to the Georgetown Constitution Hall. We have the Plan Cayman meeting that's taking place from now until 9 o'clock. We now go live.
All right. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Plan Cayman public consultation for the Georgetown District. My name is Simon Boxall, and I'm going to be moderating tonight's session. Thank you all for joining us. And earlier I noticed the Honourable Kenneth Brown was in the house. I see our Leader of the Opposition, the Honourable Roy McTaggart. And I'd also like to introduce our panel. Sorry, this is a little echoey. At our head table, we have the Director of the Planning Department and the Executive Secretary of the CPA, Mr. Haroon Pandoui. And beside him to the left is Richard Mileham, the Planning Officer Policy and Development. And also beside him we have Mr. Ian Paradou, Chairman of the Central Planning Authority, along with Ms. Christine Maltman, who's also a member of the CPA. In addition, scattered about the room in various places, and you probably see name tags on them, is Mr. Gillard McLaughlin, another member of the CPA, Mr. Nat McLaughlin, another member, Mr. Joshua Bernard, member, Ms. Celicia Bancroft, member, and Mr. Peter Campbell and Charles Russell Jr. So there's still a few people signing in and receiving their program in the back. So I'm just going to provide a little quick brief overview of what we're doing here tonight as people get settled. So before I do that, I will just ask you, I think most people have already collected their program and signed in. We're not going to be using that data for very much other than to send you updates. I should also let you know that Radio Cayman is recording this. It's not televised, but it's being recorded live and will also be shown on YouTube. So you're going to get updates if you did sign in and give your email on information on the next steps and the public consultation process. So Plan Cayman is the name for Cayman's long-range comprehensive development plan, giving physical development and overall land use guidance. It includes three key elements: a planning statement, which is really what we're here to discuss tonight, and then the third phase, because we already had the framework. After the planning statement, area plans and zoning map, which details the policy for different locations around all three Cayman Islands, because this is going to include the sister islands, and zoning assignments. And then also the next phase is development and planning regulations. And there's going to be an opportunity to provide input and public consultation on all of these aspects. But in particular, we're looking tonight at the planning statement. So we're here tonight to get your input and gather your feedback on this very important document, the draft planning statement. This is the very first phase of the process of updating the development plan, which, as many of you know, was produced in 1997. So this document includes the strategies from the National Planning Framework, and your input is crucial for refining these plans. This town hall, or public consultation, as I mentioned earlier, is only the first step of three in the development plan review process. The next two phases, area plans and zoning maps, and the Department of Planning regulations will each have their own, development and planning regulations will each have their own public consultation. For today's town hall, the purpose is to discuss the planning statement. If you've not reviewed the document, you can find it online at plancayman.ky, and we have a limited number of copies of this document in the back this evening. So we're going to ask everyone to put their phone on silent if you haven't already. There are some refreshments in the back if you wanted to grab coffee or water. And we have a bathroom if you want to go through. It's in this door right here. And tonight's town hall, as I explained, is being broadcast live. So I just want to welcome everybody. And, I'm going to introduce you now to our key speakers and panelists for tonight. From the Department of Planning again, it'll be Mr. Haroon Pandui, Mr. Richard Mileham, who's going to open, I think, with a bit of a discussion specific to the document. And then questions and things will be fielded by the members of the CPA, including Mr. Paradu, Mr. McLaughlin, Miss McLaughlin, Mr. Bernard, Miss Celicia Bancroft, Miss Christine Maltman, Peter Campbell, and Charles Russell Jr. So at this stage, I think we're going to welcome Planning Officer for Planning and Development, Mr. Richard Mileham, to the podium.
Okay, thank you, Simon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for attending. It's another great turnout, so it's great to see. Yes, so as Simon said, I'm going to give a short presentation that sets the context for the planning statement. I'll explain the development plan process as a whole, that we're terming Plan Cayman, and where the planning statement fits within that whole process. And I'll then outline the next steps for moving forward beyond this. So here on the screen, there's a diagram showing the various parts of the development plan. And the main thing to take from this diagram is that the plan is not one single document. It's made up of a number of elements, from high-level national goals and objectives down to local area-based policies and detailed guidelines. And this really is a key point to make, and I think it's one that we really need to stress, that the document that we presented for public consultation at this stage, the planning statement, is just one part in the whole puzzle. This document is not the whole development plan, it's just a piece. And I'll explain how the different pieces all come together to make the whole development plan. So the Plan Cayman process began with the National Planning Framework, the NPF document, in late 2018. And hopefully some of you will recall the consultation exercise that took place towards the end of 2018 and into early 2019. And that document represents a broad policy document for other stages of the development plan. That then brings us to this current stage, the planning statement document. And this is the document that we're currently seeking your feedback on. The purpose of the planning statement is to define the zones, the overlays, and the broad policies that we will then apply in later stages in the development plan review. You might think of the planning statement as a mission statement, as it seeks to define and set out top-level priorities. So there's two very important aspects of the planning statement I really want to highlight. The first of these is that it includes the sister islands, and the second is that it establishes the concept of area plans. Now, area plans, which would be the next stage, will be prepared over the coming years. And the idea of area plans is they'll follow the broad national policies, but in a way that is specific, appropriate, and relevant to these different areas. So when we prepare area plans, that's when we start to apply zones to the map. This is where, with your help, with your feedback, we'll determine the most appropriate zoning requirements to meet the needs of different places. Each area plan will therefore involve full public consultation, and we very much want you to be included continuously throughout the process as the years kind of... And apologies if you can't quite see it from the back, but this is on page 5 of the planning statement document, and it's also online. These are indicative, but they've been drawn based on the character of these different places. So they recognise that the character within Grand Cayman, within the sister islands, it varies significantly from Georgetown to East End to Little Cayman and so on. And so because of this varied character, applying broad land use zones across the islands at one time doesn't perhaps serve those places adequately. What are appropriate heights, densities, setbacks, etc., let's say for a commercial zone in one area, might not work for another area. So as each area plan is prepared, with your input and with your feedback, and the zones are applied to the map, different requirements, restrictions, and regulations can be introduced to help achieve the vision for those places. So coming back to the planning statement, this relatively short document at 30 pages has been prepared based on the policies that we established and that we agreed in the National Planning Framework, but it's using the structure of the 1997 planning statement, so hopefully it has that familiarity. Section 1 of the document provides some background information and then sets out the development plan structure, how the different documents fit together, and it then sets out a vision and a set of objectives which all seek to balance social, environmental, and economic considerations, and to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So this sustainable development objective runs throughout the planning statement. Section 2 of the planning statement is titled The Challenges and Objectives We Face, and this helps to explain why this document and why this whole development plan process is so important. The development plan relates to such a wide range of issues, from the quality of the natural environment to the availability of housing at all income levels, from supporting a successful economy to responding to climate change, improving transportation, meeting demands for infrastructure, and providing public spaces for recreation. So you can see we have a lot of issues that we have to balance and that we have to incorporate. And this, if we can do that successfully, that's how we maintain high quality of life standards. Section 3, which is from page 11 onwards in the document, defines the various planning zones and explains why we have them and what their main purpose is. These zones follow a somewhat familiar format to the existing land use zones that you might be used to working with, and they're listed here on the right-hand side. But there are some key changes and some key additions that I'll just kind of briefly highlight. These include an agricultural zone, which replaces the existing agricultural residential zone. We've introduced an estate residential zone, which provides for large lot single-family residences outside of urban areas. A single-family residential zone for locations on the periphery of urban areas. Moving into industrial areas, we've introduced a transit industrial zone, which allows for transit operations such as ports and airports and associated services and facilities. We've separated and included education and civic zones to better define the locations for those particular uses. In terms of tourism, we've added a resort residential zone between tourism zones and residential areas. And lastly, because I know this is quite a lot, a community open space zone, which would define privately owned spaces that may provide active or passive recreation. And I appreciate that's a very quick skim through, but all the information is contained in the document. So these will serve to provide clear rules on what may or may not be permitted in different zones, giving more certainty for landowners and residents. Section 4 of the document sets out different overlay zones, and these are for situations where there are particular circumstances that require additional considerations beyond the underlying zone and category. And so there's 5 overlays, they're all new overlays. The first of these is a natural resource preservation overlay, which provides a way of ensuring that development is sensitive to natural resources by applying additional development standards or mitigation measures, whatever is necessary to do that, to achieve that. There's an airport approach overlay, which ensures safe and appropriate land uses within approaches of airports. A heritage preservation overlay, which is an update and a replacement of the existing historic overlay, and it has some slight kind of additional features. Fourthly, a land subject to acquisition overlay, which establishes a method to designate property that the government intends to acquire, perhaps for roads or for public parks, community buildings. And then lastly, a sensitive coastline overlay, which seeks to ensure that growth in vulnerable coastal areas, which are defined by risk analysis models, incorporate hazard risk reduction considerations. And this is really about minimizing threats to human safety, to people's properties, and to the natural environment. And then lastly, section 5 of the document sets out other policy considerations, which are additional policies that will be applied regardless of the underlying zoning or the overlay. These considerations, which are listed on the screen, cover a wide range of topics, and they all serve to meet the main objectives of the plan. So that's obviously a very quick overview of the planning statement document. And again, we encourage everyone to review the document and to provide your feedback. And the easiest way is to visit the website, plancayman.ky. Here you can find the document itself, the supporting materials, the feedback form. And this is the main way that we're seeking to collect responses. And just to reiterate, the consultation is open until 30th of July. In terms of taking the document forward, post-consultation, once all the responses have been received, we would then assist the Central Planning Authority in seeking approval to convene a development plan tribunal, which would be the process to consider all the objections and the representations received. Following the tribunal hearings, a report of amendments would be prepared for consideration prior to the planning statement being forwarded to Ministry for onward transmission to Cabinet and then Parliament for consideration. So ultimately, this planning statement document would need to be approved in Parliament before we can then proceed with the first of the area plans. And then just to conclude, I just want to come back to this diagram and just highlight again that the planning statement is simply a step along the way. It's part of the overall process. It defines the zones and the overlays and other more general considerations which will be applied on an area-by-area basis. So, thanks very much, everybody. Thank you for coming out and being part of this process. We really appreciate that, and I hope this has been a useful introduction. You can always reach out to my team in the department. We're always available to answer questions, provide more information, and I'll turn it back to Simon for questions.
Thank you very much, Richard, and it's great to see such a strong crowd out there. I just want to, before we carry on, just acknowledge too Mr. Kenny Ebanks, who's a member of the 2024 Development Plan presentation, as well as being a member of the CPA, and he will be taking part in the consultations in East End and Northside. Good to see you, Mr. McField. So now we're going to go to the question portion of it, and I'm going to open up with just a couple of questions to get us warmed up. I don't know who on the panel wants to take them, but question one, why is Plan Cayman important? Miss Christine, you're looking at me. Why is Plan Cayman important?
You looked at me first.
Okay.
Like I said, good evening, everyone. I'm Christine Maltman. I'm on the CPA for my sins, but I moved here in 1994 because I was recruited by Carson and Kenneth to join the planning department, along with my colleague Denis Thibault, who's now at NRA. Like I said in West Bay on Tuesday night, I think it's funny that you've asked a planner to say why it's important to plan. If you ever meet a planner that says it's not a good idea to plan, don't engage them. For starters, Plan Cayman is important because it's a requirement in law. But we're not here just to pay lip service to the law. The more important aspect is that any country that's concerned with the future needs of its country needs to plan, and needs to plan on an ongoing, regular, and recurring basis, i.e. updating the development plan. And this is especially true for Cayman, which has undergone significant change. I've only been here, like I said, for 30 years, and I've seen a great deal, so I can't imagine how most of the rest of you have embraced, been frustrated, or just witnessed the level of change and the types of change in Cayman. And this brings me to the most important part, I think. Public consultation is absolutely imperative as part of this planning process. I'm grateful to see such a great turnout tonight. We need your help to assess community needs, understand what's going on in the districts, for you to check us, tell us where we might be getting it wrong, where we're getting it right, but just the importance of participating in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Maltman. So question number 2, how will Plan Cayman be implemented? Mr. Pandui.
Good evening, everyone. As Richard alluded to during his presentation, the review of the development plan introduces a number of distinct steps in the process. The first of which was the National Planning Framework, which set this broad outline as to how we were going to step by step get to a new national development plan. We're currently now working on or considering the planning statement. From the planning statement, and I think this is a key aspect of it, we will be moving to area plans. I know in the past, most people are familiar with the zoning map that was done covering the entire island at one time. We recognize that Cayman has unique communities, and we want to pay homage to that and make sure that we get it right within those communities, and that we don't take too broad of a brush approach and we lose the uniqueness of a community. So that's why from the planning statement, which sets the broad goals and outcomes, we will then move into the area plans, which is, for lack of a better term, where the rubber meets the road. That's where we'll actually be looking at the zoning in a particular community. Is it fit for purpose? Does it need to change? We've got some new zones coming online. You know, harkening back to what Richard said, an important thing for us is, if you look at, say, neighborhood commercial on, say, the 7 Mile Beach corridor is distinctly different than neighborhood commercial within a community such as Savannah. And we want to make sure that we're providing a community with uses, with a plan, and with the planning regulations that meet the needs of that community. That's introducing different building heights, the use of different materials. Say a parking lot that is asphalt is appropriate in a certain area, but within a community, perhaps we need to look at a more impervious surface such as gravel. So those area plans, and which then will then be supported by changes to the regulations, is where the plan will actually meet the community, embrace the community, and be a part of the community.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Pandui. So one final one. How can the community get involved in the Plan Cayman process? Obviously, this is part of that, but Christine, do you want to go again? Yep, good. Thank you.
I do, because community involvement, like I said earlier, is really, really important. One method that we had Simon and Anne on Tuesday in West Bay was something that was completely new to me as an old planner, and it was okay. And I'm sorry, I might have tuned out, but you can communicate with us this evening through this app anonymously if you wish. Tonight is obviously one of the best ways to start the process of community involvement. And I'd really encourage you to encourage your family, friends, and colleagues to attend these meetings. I see some faces in the crowd that attended the West Bay meeting. Hopefully we don't undo anything we said on Wednesday, but if we did, check us, like I said earlier, and hopefully you learned something new this evening. I really think everyone needs to read the planning statement. It's not a huge document, but it's a start. And please provide your feedback on that. As the director said, it's broad brush, but it's the first step in the process, and we really need you to let us know if we're on the right track. And you can provide your feedback online. There's a form. It's like a SurveyMonkey document. If you're not inclined to provide feedback like that, you want to do it the good old-fashioned way, by all means, drop your comments to planning. And if I'm getting any of that stuff wrong, planning, please check me. Like the director said, though, it doesn't stop there. We really need to get down to the nitty-gritty with the area plans. In the document that was distributed this evening that Richard made a presentation on, have a look at pages 4 and 5 of that draft planning statement. There you're going to find the draft boundaries for each area plan, and this is where we really need to engage the public. The public isn't just being invited to be engaged on the draft planning statement. We really need you to continue helping us with the momentum on the area plans. That's where we're going to really need your detailed feedback as it relates to the districts, whether or not you live in the districts. We welcome feedback from the entire country on any district. And I really want to note too the importance of the sister islands being part of the development plan for the very first time. We've had a development plan since 1971, but only during this administration have we been given direction to formally include Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Each of the, and the district, the Development Control Board, which is the parallel board to the CPA, has indicated that Cayman Brac and the sister islands are significantly enough different that there should be an area plan for each island. So have a look at pages 4 and 5. Please follow us in our progress on the area plans and stay involved. Thank you.
Great answer. Thank you so much, Ms. Christine. So as you've heard from both Richard, actually, and Christine, we're really welcoming the questions and feedback. And this is important to maintain and enhance our economy, our social fabric, and protect our environment. I see Tara has already got her hand up. I'm just going to talk a little bit more before we go to the questions, but it's coming. So we're going to actually ask people to queue up to come up to the microphone, and there's a lot of people here, as you see. So we've got a hard stop at 9 o'clock, and so yeah, over here by Kevon. So we're going to actually limit it to one question each, and I imagine some of you are going to have some, or really want to have a follow-up, almost undoubtedly. So what we're going to ask you to do in that situation is email those to plancayman@gov.ky, and it's difficult, but we need to be mindful of the crowd and respectful of each other, and provide as many people with an opportunity to ask a question as if they can. Also, earlier, Christine mentioned Slido, so you can, if you don't feel comfortable coming up to the microphone or doing something publicly, you can use your phone, get to the camera setting, scan that, slido.com, and then you're going to be able to send in a question which is actually going to go directly here to my phone, and then I will ask you a question here from the podium if you want to be anonymous. Already 15 questions. Sorry, Melanie? No, we're not, because we've got to run the radio Cayman. So, no, that's... So, we're encouraging open and respectful dialogue, obviously, and we recognize there's quite a lot of passion involved in this topic, and so we're here primarily, well, we're really here to discuss this planning statement only, and there's going to be a round of public consultations for each of the next steps, including the area plans, the zone maps, and then the development and planning regulations. So that's coming. If you've got questions, hold on to those. And our panelists, I don't know if you want to quickly stand, members of the audience who are part of the CPA, so people can actually recognize you. I don't know if you want to sort of hide out, but there we have a number of you. Here we go. This is Mr. Gillard. I see Peter is in the background here. Yep, so they're going to be fielding some of the questions as well, and I imagine the microphone will be passed around. No, they won't. Anne says they're not, but we're very grateful for their contribution anyway. Sorry about that, Anne. So we've told you it's live, and I think we're going to go straight into, while a couple of you line up to ask the questions, I think I'm going to go straight in with a question we received on Slido. How will overlay zones work in consideration of other legislation, for example, the National Conservation Act? Mr. Ian, I don't know, how will overlay zones work in consideration of other legislation, for example, the National Conservation Act? Anybody want to answer that one?
Well, each legislation will have priority. National conservation has a priority over the environment and affected. Okay. So the National Conservation Act has preference on things like environment and adverse effects, and they have under 41.4, they can instruct the planning board after consultation on how you deal with adverse effects in certain instances, protected areas, and so on. Every legislation will have different, different effects on the planning process. We take advice from all government entities, NRA, DOE, DEH, Fire Department, Civil Aviation, Water Authority, and what I missed. Anyway, there's a lot of government entities that give advice when we grant planning permission.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Richard, do you want to chime in?
Yeah, the document does specify that exactly, that natural resource preservation overlay, it says on page 20 that within protected areas and defined critical habitats under the NCA, the National Conservation Act, any development or activity should be in accordance with the relevant protected area management plan or conservation plan. So that is acknowledged.
Simon,
Yes.
it's me over here. Hello, Christine.
Hi, Ms. Christine.
Sorry, just, I'm going to harp on getting as much involvement as possible. I'm not sure if Radio Cayman listeners can actually access the barcodes for Slido if they wanted to.
Okay, that's a good point.
They can't even use the number
No.
code? Okay.
They can't. If you're listening at home, please submit your question to plancayman.ky. You can actually also go along to the government building. On the ground floor, there's a little booth for the planning department. If you just want to drop it off, that's fine too. Okay. Yeah, you can email it into planning. We might, I don't know if we're going to be able to get to the question tonight if you email it, but we could probably use your question at a later consultation. So I'm going to quickly, time is of the essence. Is it possible, this is another question, is it possible to consider South Church Street as a part of the scenic routes? South Church Street as part of the scenic routes. Don't all jump at once, guys.
Me into it. I'll talk forever. Yes, most definitely. And again, that is one of the key concepts of utilizing the area plan, is that we're able to drill down to that level, and that something that is as unique as South Church Street does not get lost in this sort of bigger an attempt to deal with creating a national development plan. So again, once we're creating the area plan for which that falls within, we're able to drill down to that level, consulting with landowners, consulting with those most impacted and affected. I do believe there is great scope to be able to include that into a scenic coastline.
Thank you, Mr. Pandui. Okay, we're going to bring up Tora right after this question. Will PADS, planned area developments, still be allowed in light of these zones being put forward in the planning statement? Richard, that might be you.
Yes. Yeah, the short answer is yes. Yeah, there's a section in the document, section 5.2, which speaks directly to planned area developments, and yeah, that process is not going away.
Thanks very much, Mr. Maham. Ms. Tara Ebanks, would you like to defer? Absolutely. Ms. Ralston, thank you. Sorry, I thought you were coming to the podium.
So first of all, I just want to say I'm really happy to see that this is happening, but by the same token, I'm a little bit doubtful perhaps. I know Christine said that you're not here to pay lip service to the law, but I note that the current development plan that we have is 27 years old, and the law, the current development and planning law at section 10 says that every 5 years, there should be a new plan, or at least a survey to see, if any changes need to be made to the then current development plan. So we're 27 years late. What confidence can you give all of us that this is going to happen? Because time is running out, land is running out, our environment is going to hell, and I have a child that I want to leave something to. So I want this to work. I just want to know what confidence you can give us that you're serious about this and that the government is serious about this. Thank you.
Mr. Pandui.
I guess in answering that question, I would turn it back to a question. I mean, there's a lot of technical expertise here, but as you know, especially when you're dealing with something like a national development plan, it's driven by the people. It's driven by the involvement of the people. It's driven by the interest. We can come up with these technical plans. We can sit with people. We can translate your hopes, your dreams, your visions into a technical planning document. But it requires the people sitting in this room to drive that process forward and have those conversations. Let us know what you're thinking. Actually engage in the process. I think for far too long we sort of get caught up into, you know, there's a technical document, and the technical document should somehow have a life of its own. But the reality is, and especially when it comes to planning, planning is about the lives of the people. It's your community. It's how you live today, how you will live tomorrow, the legacy that you will leave behind, and that takes the involvement of every single person in this room to actually drive that forward. And unfortunately, if you disengage from that process, then the process will disengage from you. No, I mean, I started with the department in 2001, and one of my first, project assignment was working on the review of a development plan. I think one of the things with reviewing a development plan is we have to be careful that we don't sort of become a self-defeating cycle, because I remember in 2001, people said the same thing. They said, why are we here? This will never go anywhere. So I guess the question is, how do we start to move something forward if we start the conversation by saying, this is not going to go anywhere?
Thank you very much. And again, just will remind the public that we're limiting to one question, and I know some of you have got undoubtedly have some very valid follow-ups, but we are trying to limit it to one question. You see the size of the crowd. And so, Melanie, are you ready to come up? Miss Melanie, are you ready, Tara? Okay. Sorry, Mr. Kevon. Please speak into the mic because the listeners on Radio Cayman cannot hear it otherwise.
Can everybody in the room who attended hear me? Can everybody hear me? Wonderful. I want to say thank you again for coming out tonight. It really makes a big difference for especially Caymanians who have come out tonight. I did note that in the 30-page document, I didn't actually see the word Caymanian referenced anywhere. I realize that our community is made up of more than Caymanians, but I did think it was interesting that Caymanians were not mentioned anywhere in the document. My question relates to section 2.3 of the drafted planning statement, which talks about the importance of appropriate and efficient use of land. Given that we already have laws that are being violated on a daily basis by developers, homeowners, dumping, destroying mangroves, can someone please answer what is considered as a significant impact on an area? If you all look at section 2.3 on your document, it talks about the statement. It says that it needs to consider things that do not significantly impact an area. What are some of the considerations when you talk about significantly impacting an area? Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Significantly impacting an area. I'm going to hand that to Ms. Maltman.
I'm going to take a stab at that and put my planning hat on. In my view, a significant impact would be a material planning consideration. Fortunately or unfortunately, Caymanian or non-Caymanian is not a planning consideration, a land use planning consideration. A significant impact would vary depending on the zone, the specific application. So, for example, just taking it to the nth degree, proposing a steel manufacturing plant in the middle of a single-family residential neighborhood would have a series of impacts that would probably be more significant to that area than if you proposed it in a heavy industrial area. So that starts getting at the reason we have zones. I see you scrunching up your eyebrows. Am I not getting to the question, or is that helpful or no?
Your example is actually, I think, in the document. Oh, thank you.
Oh, it is?
I think, well, not that exact example, but that value and that importance, and I realize it's a high-level document, so it's not meant to be like drilled down onto. That is kind of referenced in the planning statement document in terms of looking at zones and what's appropriate. I guess I was trying to figure out, when you talk about significant impact on an area, who defines that criteria? What is that criteria? Because we do understand each zone will be different depending on historic sites, depending on environment, depending on what the people want, parks, walkways, all that good stuff. It was,
yes, all of the above.
Yeah,
All
so
right, Tara.
it's the significant impact that I'm trying to figure out. What is that significant impact criteria? Is there a list? And because I do realize we're only allowed one question per person, and I apologize, I do want to ask a second question.
I think we'll leave it there, actually. You can send it in by
but that's my
mail.
question.
Okay, let them answer that question,
if
Tara.
we submit a question, what is the response time we should expect to the answers? Thanks.
I'm not sure the answer to the second question, but on your original question, which you followed up on, no, there is not a list of significant impacts, like a shopping list that you can tick for the CPA. However, as the chairman mentioned already, we do circulate, the planning department on our behalf circulates planning applications to various agencies, and they give us advice, whether it's NRA, DEH, all the agencies that chairman listed. So they might give us some advice. Some of that advice may or may not be a planning consideration. And sometimes on appeal, we've had decisions overturned because we considered something significant or impactful that wasn't from a planning point of view. So the best answer I can give you to the question, Ms. Tara, is that it varies depending on all the things that you said. It also may or may not be impacted by objections or representations from people in the neighborhood who would additionally give us some insight that we might not otherwise know based on the application or the agency comments. I hope that was more helpful.
Thank you both. So we've actually got a vehicle outside with the lights on. It's a Honda. I'm missing one digit, but it's 949, and then we got 396. If you got a Honda, it might be the one with the lights on. And also, we've actually found a way to get our listeners to, if they wish to send in a question on Slido, you can interact by going to Slido, SLIDO.com, and entering the code number 3745268. And I'm going to do that one more time, Slido, SLIDO.com, and enter the number 3745268. I noticed a couple of people with hands up. We do have these chairs, so once you've done your question, just make your way back to your chair. We're not taking hands-up questions. We will just have people come over to the chairs on the side. And we've got 4 people in the chairs at the present time. So, Miss Melanie Carmichael, would you like to take we'll welcome you to take the microphone from Mr. Kevon. Just a reminder, please speak into the microphone so the listeners at home can hear you. I know, hi. Yes, sir.
I would like to know where did this pick up from, because I've been involved in reviewing 2-3 occasions over the last 20 years. Is this
Yes, sorry, Mr. Bodden. Let's just get you the mic. They can't hear you on the radios. Kevon, quickly. Mr. Bodden has been involved in the planning process for a long time. No, you're fine.
But
You're fine.
I think it'd be helpful, and I think it's not very nice to be entertaining phone calls when all of these people are here. If you had no calls, I could understand it.
Right.
Anyway, I said I was involved in reviewing the same document or similar, 2 or 3 times over the last 20 years. I am almost skeptical, as they did over here said a while ago, about this one going through. Nevertheless, if you all would make it known, is this a completely new document that's coming forward, or is this picking up where some of the other ones left off? That's what I want to find out.
Interesting question. So are we taking some of the lessons learned in the past, or is this a complete start from scratch?
Yep, I'll take that one. No, absolutely picking up on the lessons from the past. So the National Planning Framework that we produced in 2018, the primary objective of that was to gather all that information, not only the kind of historic planning documents that we were kind of going through and researching, but also pulling in data research from other departments, other agencies within government. So we're not reinventing the wheel. At that point, we were just showing all the evidence that we had. We consulted on that, we amended it based on the feedback, and then this document that you have before you today takes the policies from that and condenses it down as best as we can. So no, we're not here trying to reinvent the wheel. We are a little bit in terms of process, because I think the process has been broken down into the area plans to make it manageable. But the core policies come from a place. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Ms. Smile. And great question, Mr. Bodden. I think we're going to take your advice too. It's standing room only in the room for the listeners in the community. So we've got a packed house. We're going to try to work through the people waiting in line. So Ms. Carmichael, Mrs. Carmichael, if you're ready to ask your question, we'd welcome that, please.
Sure. First thing, going back to Sharon's point, I don't want to start off on a negative, but I will as it follows on from there. I have actually been trying to reach out to Richard for probably a year and a half, and I have been advised that there's no engagement, no opportunity for a meeting. Please send my comments in writing and maybe you'll respond. So your engagement here, nothing to do with the CPA, but this is a comment for the planning department. I'm just wondering how that's going to change or what the restriction is on that. So that's just a comment, doesn't need an answer.
But I'll venture one anyway.
Sure.
As with any process, we have to be able to track that information. And it has to be done in a manner in which everyone is able to engage at the same time. Because it is a national debate that happens. So that's why we ask that you provide your engagement in writing at that time, so it could be archived and put into this process. But everyone needs to be able to engage on the plan at the same time.
Thank you.
I want to add something to that. Part of the process that has not been mentioned yet, and it's just picking up from the director's point, is that there's actually an appeals process that happens after each public consultation. So we've had some feedback that the public consultation period isn't long enough. I take that on board, but it's the prescribed time frame that's prescribed in the law. Also prescribed in the law is that following the public consultation process, there's an appeals process. And we're trying to stay within the law for both the public consultation process so that when it comes to the appeals process, we don't get the entire process thrown out because we haven't followed the process. So I know that the entire process is a little daunting. Just referring you to the law doesn't help if you're not buried in this law every day, like the planning department is and the CPA and some of the other agencies that assist us. So if we're brushing over any of the process too quickly or in a manner that you don't understand or you just want to ask why and how, please stop us and ask us. We're in the public consultation period now. You can call the planning department, you get an answer on that, or contact CPA members for an answer on that. Sorry to take up time like that, Simon, but...
No, thank you too. And just a reminder, there is a feedback form. It's not feedback on tonight. This is feedback on the planning statement, and you can get to that on www.plancayman.ky, and the final opportunity is July 30th. So you need to get your comment in beforehand. Melanie, did you have a question, or was that... Yeah, I think you did. Here we go.
Sorry, okay. So I'm speaking now as a resident of the community. So the drafting of Plan Cayman predates COVID-19. Since then, 40 countries representing 1 billion citizens have declared a climate emergency. Climate crisis is the biggest global threat to health and prosperity. Yet the Cayman Islands have not adopted the necessary legislation to ensure a truly resilient development plan. For example, despite recommendations 10 years ago from the Department of Environment, the National Roads Authority, and the Water Authority, there is no stormwater plan for the South Sound catchment basin, which is crucial for the area's hydrology, drainage, and marine health. A national stormwater management plan is barely mentioned in the planning statement. So given this context, how does the planning statement actually prioritize systems thinking and address climate resilience adequately? As a South Sounder, I'm really concerned about vague commitments where there is a real need for tangible action. We need joined-up thinking and transparent collaboration.
Thank you, Melanie. So that's probably a question for you, Mr. Malham.
I'm not sure I heard the question in there, but I can respond to the statement for sure. Yeah, absolutely acknowledge and appreciate and agree that joined-up thinking is essential, and that I think that's just reflected throughout this document. The slide that I showed with the challenges we face, all those different topic areas, they don't necessarily all sit with planning, but planning sits in the middle of that. That's what I've found in the 6 years that I've been with the department and all the different committees that I sit on and the steering groups and the working groups. We are continually taking in that information and doing the best we can to balance all those different priorities. So specifically in terms of stormwater and drainage, it is referenced in the document, and I'm in agreement with you that a comprehensive stormwater management plan is needed, that I'm hopeful within area plans they can look at that on a area by area basis and do something truly meaningful in that area.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Mel. We're going to make way for the next person. We've got a little bit of a line going on now, so appreciate the question. As we can see, there's a lot of emotion involved, and as challenges with the balance between the economy, the social fabric, and the environment, so it's bound to invoke a lot of emotion. Your question, ma'am.
Hi, good night. First of all, I'm going to start on a positive and actually thank the CPA, the director, the Department of Planning, because this is a very good initiative. I think it's as you can see from the crowd, it's definitely needed, but perhaps 2 hours might not be enough for Georgetown is a very large district. It's also a very mixed community where you have a number of complex things that happen, but we thank you for the initiative, but I would highly recommend that know your audience and perhaps have another session because I know...
Can we go to the questions? Sorry, we've got so many people here.
I will.
Very respectfully.
You also said I'm allowed 2 minutes, so I'm not...
Okay, that's a fair point. Yeah.
So,
Sir, just to answer that first question. No, I'm not taking your 2 minutes,
No.
you know. I think the gentlelady yields 2 minutes to me. Okay, I'll be quick. Exactly to your point, this is why we've introduced the area plan concept. Because I think for far too long, and back to Ms. Rolston's statement, this is why things it just became such a beast. And unfortunately, it just got to the point where it was easier to step away from it than actually move it forward. Okay? With the area plans, now we're able to appreciate the uniqueness of an area such as Georgetown, that we can actually get in there and sit with residents and create an area plan that actually reflects what they wish for their community to be, as opposed to showing up with a broad brush that says, well, this is what we're doing over here, so congratulations, we're going to do it over here. So, and let's look forward to every single person engaging in that at that level as well.
Just to add to that, I'd like to just make it clear that we do have an online forum as well, and I take your point that there's a lot of people in Georgetown and the room is bursting at the seams. On July 18th, we're going to give you the details of how you can log on, but there's going to be an online session as well, and we'd encourage you to take part in that. We're reducing the amount of questions coming in on Slido, so if you were hoping to go anonymously, we're taking Mr. Bodden's point. We think it's reasonable that people have made the effort to come here. We'd like to get your questions first. So go ahead with yours, please, ma'am.
So my question is, and I'm going to apologize in advance, I didn't get to review the whole thing. And let me just say for the record that I'm asking my question as a Georgetowner, born and bred. So no civil service status on top of this, please. What I didn't see so far in a number of the zones, and specifically in the tourism zone, I did not see a lot of talk about green spaces and open spaces for the public, Caymanians, everyone to use. I didn't see that. And if that is somewhere, could you please let us know, because I would like to know. You know, there's a lot of talk of high intensity, say section 3.7, high intensity tourist development, but then in point E of that, you say that you're going to ensure minimal traffic impacts on surrounding properties and existing public roads. I don't know if those two things are possible, but I would just like to know what is being done in regards to green space for persons in the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard, green spaces.
Yep, that is covered in section 5, which is the other policy considerations. So that's the ones that, irrespective of what zone or overlay you're in, it's kind of a key consideration. And section 5.9 speaks to, well, there is a statement that says require major developments, which is including multifamily residential and large commercial projects to provide open space or active, passive recreation facilities. So,
great. Next question for you. And speak into the mic so our listeners can hear.
Thank you. I actually wrote down my question so I don't forget it. It's in referring to, I think, section 3.2 in regards to agricultural zones. So I used to be a resident of Bordentown. I actually now live in Georgetown. So my question to you is, do you plan to further differentiate agriculture by size of the farm and level of agricultural activity? For example, backyard farming versus commercial level farming. I say this because I used to live in a purely residential area, not zoned for agriculture, and a commercial farm was allowed to pop up in the neighborhood, which then affected my family's quality of life, daily quality of life, based on the daily spraying activities of the commercial farm. I'm not talking about the casual farmer. I am talking commercial level, peppers, callaloo, you name it. I emailed planning, I emailed whatever compliance officer, so I do understand the need to promote agriculture, but in my case, I did not move to an area that was agriculture.
Okay.
I was there before several years, so I want to see in this plan, will you differentiate between backyard farming versus commercial level farming?
Okay, there's the question. Let's go with that. Do you want to get that one, Mr. Ian?
I think that would be,
Hold on, microphone, please. Thank you for the question.
if you're going to do our commercial farming in a residential area, that would require a change of use. So the area plans, we will hopefully establish those areas where you can do commercial farming, where it is residential, and then, you know, the issue right now is that we have a development plan that's nearly 30 years old. Ms. Sharon touched on that, right? And there's a lot of areas where it's not practical. We get a lot of requests for change of use. And you know, the plan department goes out and does receives the notices, the objectives, they come before us, and we deal with them on a case-by-case basis. Now, I don't know when this farm occurred. I don't know what happened on previous CPA. This is my first term on the CPA. I can tell you that we haven't approved any farm in a residential area.
Okay, unfortunately, people can't hear what's being said if the microphone isn't there. So if you do have a follow-up, again, I'm so sorry. We're trying to be fair. We recognize we've got a whole line of people here. So if you would make sure it's a question and that it's limited to 2 minutes max, we'd really appreciate it to give everybody the opportunity to get their question in. It's an emotional topic. But you're up now. And there's another comment, additional comment.
Simon, sorry, just to touch to that. And again, this is the reason why, and it highlights why we must update the development plan. To the question, if you look at the regulations, when you speak to a residential zone, it says in a residential zone, the primary uses are residential and horticultural. So farming in a residential zone is a permitted use. And that's why, and this is where I'm going with this, through this process, and this is why it's so important that everyone stay engaged in this process, because unless we complete this process, we're not going to get to that level that differentiates commercial farming from backyard farming. So it's one of these cases where we enforce the law. If it's permitted by law, it has to be allowed. But this is why every single person here has to be a part of this process. That because we have outgrown our development plan and we need to catch up.
Your feedback matters. Yes, thank you. Next question, please.
I would like to contest to what she just said, but hers is with farming. We have residential zone in Washington Boulevard, and we have garages in there, which supposed to be, one of them I'm aware of, supposed to be a mobile garage, but actual garage has been set up for years. We have been emailing, planning regarding the issue, and up to this date, the garage is still functional in our residential community. I overheard that the gentleman was saying that before you guys approve anything, it's normally fire department, DEH, and all of those other entities have to do their input before it's approved. Well, we have been questioning that in the communities and to the government entities, DEH and fire department. And we were told by DEH and fire department that they no longer play that role. So the fire don't have anything because we're concerned, our concern was how some apartments were being built. And if case of fire happens, the same entrance that they go into is the same, the one that they have to exit out of. So how does that work for safety if in case of fire?
So the question is, okay, we're going to cut, that's 2 minutes. The question would be are you going to restrict the development of garages and activities like that in residential communities? Okay. That's ready? Okay. Yes, okay. Okay.
I can hold it if you don't mind. Thank you.
Okay.
The meeting is to hear the concerns of the people, so I would like to put mine forward. We have a lot of our homes been have been approved to make. After children are fully grown, parents tend to turn their homes into apartments without parking areas. Then at the end of the day, we have our streets clogged up with parking. I am aware that planning has a 5-year law that once something has been built over 5 years, there's nothing can be done about it. What happens when it's been reported before the 5 years and 5 years has passed, still nothing has been done? about it. And it still creates this humongous problems in our communities. There's a lot, I agree that we need changes, we need upgrades in our law, but sir, if we're not holding the little that we have, that makes no sense. And we have all of this happening, all of this chaos happening in our communities. And when you go to the police is saying planning. When you go to planning, planning is saying the police. But the root of it is planning. Because at the end of the day, if planning was to address the issues that we're having in the illegal buildings, illegal add-ons, if planning was to be, to come in and say this can't happen, you can't do this, you need to take this down, because there's no adequate parking space, right? We have people building right next to to their border lines, right onto their fences. And the last time that I checked, there's supposed to be a certain amount of distance from your house and your wall. But right now, let me give you a perfect example. 12 Kennedy. Now, my name is Romelia, welcome by the way. 12 Kennedy that we have been reporting to you guys over and over. The structure is right alongside the fence. What if fire was to happen? The next house next door don't stand a chance. We just need you guys to try to work with the laws that we have and come out into our communities and really see what's going on.
Oh, thank you for your question. In response to that, it requires a change to the legislation. And I guess that is part of that national debate. Do you want to live in a country where the Department of Planning has the ability to tear your structure down? It's a question. Now, and I mean, it's ultimately obviously a political question that have to be answered, and that's where the involvement of your representative comes into being. But these are things that the laws will have to change to permit. Because right now, the compliance process, we issue an enforcement notice, it is actually dealt with through the courts. And a determination is made by the courts as to whether the individual is fined, whether the individual has to remove the structure. That is a matter for the courts to determine, not the Department of Planning. We initiate the enforcement process, but the end process rests with the courts. Now, if we change the legislation to a point that says, you put up your structure, you're issued a notice, you have 15 days to take it down, you don't, we can enter your premises to take it down, but that will require a legislative change. And I'm pretty sure the lawyers in the room can speak to the fact that that connects with a lot of other aspects of, there's probably some impacts on constitutional requirements, et cetera. Planning does sit in the middle of a lot of things, but it does connect a lot of things.
Thank you very much.
Just to add to that, you mentioned the fire department. The fire department comment on everything that comes to the CPA. They do inspections during the BCU process. So if an application is a legitimate application, obviously, you know, after the fact, an illegal building isn't vetted until after it's built, right, or during the process. But if an application comes in and it comes to the CPA and it follows the process, the fire department, and many other departments have made their comments, and we take a pretty strict view on that in terms of fire lanes and so on. And BCU, under the health and safety aspect of the BCU code, require that planning sign off on certain things. So the fire department have a big role, as well as other departments. Okay.
Thank you. Just a reminder that we're looking primarily at the planning statement, and there'll be consultation process, including for the development and planning regulations at a later date. But next question, please.
Good evening. Thank you for being here and giving us this opportunity to speak our mind and say the things that have been probably bothering us for a long time, for many years. I'll say a statement first and then a question after. On your page, and I'm reiterating the statement because it's so important, on your page 25, 3.10 coastal zone, where it says development which takes place in coastal waters has traditionally required a coastal works permit. In future, decisions concerning works could be brought under the Central Planning Authority, and as a voting citizen, I would like to give my vote as no, please do not let that happen. Let it remain maybe under the Ministry of Sustainability, DOE, and other departments that are more environmental. That's my statement. The the question is from page 80, 9.2 coastal zone management. And there's a lot of beautiful words in this plan, Cayman, about protecting seagrass, beach life, beach accesses, mangroves, but yet we've seen so many of that being destroyed over the last few years by the same CPA that's doing Plan Cayman. And Ms. Christine Maltman, we took your words at heart when you say at the beginning about putting planning in the hands of a planning department. That was well noted. The question is, under page 80, threats to Cayman beaches include inappropriately sited coastal developments. And then it says here, predicted climate change could affect us by 2100, which is 76 years from now. We may have a small increase of sea level rise. But at the moment, what's happening to our beaches has nothing to do with global sea level rise.
Sorry, just so everyone's clear, you're reading from a...
I'm reading from Plan Cayman.
But you're not reading from the planning statement document.
Well, it's the Plan Cayman, page 80.
Yeah, you're reading from a... You're reading from a different...
the website, your website.
Okay, but tonight we're consulting on the planning statement.
Sure, but this is still all of the same thing, right? This is everything that we're supposed to read.
We did we consulted on the national planning framework, so that process was closed. We're now consulting on the planning statement.
Sure, but what I'm saying is that we were told to read this whole thing, plancayman.ky, come here with questions and be prepared.
But questions related to the planning statement.
Right, and I'm quite sure the coastal works zoning, because it's all about zoning, right, the statement.
It's not in the planning statement.
The question with the zoning is, because of the coastal works sort of deterioration that's been happening in the beach erosions, what plan of action will Plan Cayman take to remove all of the developments that have exceeded the setbacks that used to happen, like the Marriott, the Darts, seawall? What does Plan Cayman plan to do to get back the beach from beach erosion that has happened because of excessive development?
That's a statement that's outside of tonight's scope.
Okay, well, it's still a question.
And it is one that will have to be answered, but it's just not what we're here to talk about tonight.
Well, for the record, at least
I know,
hopefully it's been noted.
You put it on the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to speak to that just a little bit. On your first point, Ms. Laura, I know you raised it in West Bay, but I'm not sure the answer was clear because you are reading from the National Planning Framework. Your first comment had to do with don't let the CPA deal with coastal permits. That has been taken out of the planning statement, so you don't have to worry about that. That is not a proposal that's on the table, unless someone in their representations wants to suggest that the CPA do it, but at the moment, that's off the table. Just on the second point, what plan of action will Plan Cayman take to remove developments that have exceeded setbacks? I take your point. What you're referring to is what some people refer to as managed retreat. Managed retreat is something that we've received no policy direction on, which is why the director mentioned that it's not in our remit right now. So far, we don't have any direction or ability to do that, but by all means, make that part of your feedback. We are taking notes tonight, but your feedback, we do require the representations in writing so that we can take them forward in the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, we've got lots of questions coming in, so again, if you can please just try to keep it as a question, and to under 2 minutes. We'll try to get to all these Slido questions as well, but Mr. Courtney.
I'll try to be really brief. I don't see anything at all here about population control, any plan for a ceiling of population or a slowing of the rate of increase in population. And to me, that is the root of all of our woes on the island. So if I'm planning the future of Cayman, I'm going to be considering some kind of control of population. Can you tell me why that's not a consideration in here? Is it outside your purview? What is that?
Mr. Mileham, thank you for that question.
Yeah, could go with a long or short answer. Yeah, it is outside of our remit. I mean, population is driven by the economy. It's not driven by us planning. There's no future figure. There's no set target for population. Cayman is not a planned society in that respect. It's a society that's based on economic growth, and the pillars of the economy are human capital-driven industries. Tourism, financial services, these all bring people to the island. And so if there was a major policy change to affect the economies that Cayman wants to engage with, that would dictate a change in the population. But what I can say we do is that, and it's stated in the National Planning Framework, we take a performance-based approach to planning. So if a development is coming forward that is of such a scale that it brings a certain number of people into an area, it has to be met with the necessary infrastructure, with the open spaces for people to have recreation, with access to roads, with access to public transportation, all these things. So we can only plan as things come forward, but we don't have a set figure for what the population is going to be by a certain date.
And I see that Mr. Honourable Kenneth Bryan would like to make his contribution on this point as well.
I'll just be really, really quick. I think it was a lovely question that you asked, and I'll definitely speak with the minister to ensure that we have some component to that, because immigration is a key factor. But I think we should also recognize that throughout this process of plan development, maybe the factor of the feel of overpopulation wouldn't be so bad if we designed it better. Because right now we're feeling the pressure, because if 50 people in one bedroom as opposed to 50 people in a house, if you spread it out better, it doesn't feel so overcrowded. So if we do this process properly and zone our location, maybe more residential, more growth in the eastern districts, it wouldn't feel so congested. But you are right, we have to think about the population growth with the development. There's no questions about that. And I promise you, I'll give you the commitment that I'll make sure that the ministry is aware of that in this development process.
So, thank you very much, Honourable Minister. And just to note, it is noted on page 7 of the statement that the population in 1990 was 27,000, and we are now looking at 81,500 people. So I think it looks like every 30 years or so, according to the graph, it's doubling. So within 30 years, we'd be looking at 160,000 if we carry on at this pace. So it's a valid question. So next.
Yeah, good night.
Speak right into the microphone if you wouldn't mind. Hold on.
Yeah, good night. I'm not sure if I'm going to be confident I'll get the answer that I'm looking for right now with what I've heard previously, but I kind of worried about the coastal erosion, what they're calling about this climate change thing. Have the sea level rising, but I've been on the shores for since I was in primary school. Haven't seen a single change in sea level rising according to what the statistics are saying, right? But what I gotta say about this, right, is that the development that is going on, the beaches are disappearing. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter right now that I'm trying to teach the environment to, and she loves the sea life. I have an aquarium at home that I teach her by, whenever I get the chance at home. Spend half of the day at work and then half of the day trying to get bills paid. And then you got the weekends that you can at least go on the beach and try to show what you know, right? Because I've been on the iron shores, and iron shores I care about because there are sea life in the iron shores. I'm talking about the rocks that are on the land. We have a high water mark. I don't know what is the idea of high water mark when it comes into the environmental impact assessment and stuff, but this development plan thing, the Cayman plan, I wonder if it's the same thing that the environmental impact is doing, because if that's the case, I have almost zero hope that they're going to still do what they want and then get away with it because they can pay a fine. That's concerning to me because we're losing our coastal area. And I am engaged in that a lot.
Yeah. So the question is, I guess, what is it in the plan to protect the coastline? And yes.
If there's anything that I see going on, am I able to report to this thing that they're doing now? Because it should be more into a modern thing that they're doing, right?
Yep. Thank you very much for the question. So
we lack an enforcement on this island, so that if someone is willing to enforce something, will it be carried out as thought?
Okay, thanks for those questions. coastal protection in the statement and enforcement. Is there anything in the statement relating to enforcement?
I'll probably speak to the first part of that. Then in terms of identifying and protecting those sensitive coastlines, yes, there's an addition of a new, what we're calling a sensitive coastline overlay. And so when we take each area plan, we'll study basically the areas of coast that are at threat, and that will be based on the data that we would receive from hazard management and probably Department of Environment and whichever other sources. And so in those locations, we'd have additional considerations and whatever it might take to protect that. And that's not just about protecting the environment, obviously that's very important, but it's protecting human life, human safety, people's buildings and properties.
Okay, great. Can you make it a question very short, like 30 seconds max?
Pouring cement on the iron shore, is that permitted, like right next to the water?
Is that in the statement, pouring cement? I don't think that's not allowed.
No, because I see it going on.
Site plan, it's not part of this. No, it's not acceptable. But yeah, there is things on page 22 of the document that says, ensure that proposed growth in identified potentially vulnerable coastal areas is balanced with hazard risk reduction considerations that aim to prevent coastal erosion, as that gentleman mentioned. Development within the overlay will be controlled to minimize threats to human safety, properties, and the natural environment. Next question, please.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Thanks
evening.
for being here. So I've read the document in full, and I understand that this is preliminary on the road to a national development plan. I recognize the effort made thus far, and I think it's a good first step. Like so many of us here, I want to be optimistic, I really do. My question is more so related to legislation and enforcement. In the past, I've worked with an associated agency, reviewing plans, submitting comments to you all, reading the minutes. I've been in contact with many of you in the past. So many of us have heard and seen just generally the destruction of our environment, the ignoring of comments from other agencies, DOE, National Trust, etc. And we've seen where private landowners can destroy, just plow ahead in mangroves, virgin bushland, you name it, and it's an after-the-fact submission, boom, bam, it's done, slap on the wrist, right? So this zoning is a great idea. I like it going forward because it's guidance of where we want to be, what we want to do, where we want to place it. I get it, and I like that idea in theory. But my question, I guess I'm asking is there any plan to amend legislation or bolster the ranks with Caymanians for enforcement to police these developments as they go along and watch what's actually happening on the ground level? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Pandui.
So, coming from the area plans, there will be changes to the regulations to give effect to the area plans. So those changes to the legislation will be coming as part of that process.
Thank you very much. Before we get to Mr. Billy, just one question from the audience. Why not schools, etc., spread through the communities instead of clumped into education zones?
And again, that's what the area plans are to accomplish, because right now we look at, and it served its purpose for where Cayman was at that time. It was done on a very national basis to say, because of the proximity of schools, or sorry, the number of schools we needed based on children, the economies of scale, it made sense to co-locate them in one area. But the society has changed, the densities have changed, that we can now spread those schools within communities, and as part of this area plan process, to designate sites for future schools within communities so that that children can actually walk to school, bike to school, have safe pathways to do that, working with partners such as the National Roads Authority to lead to that outcome.
Makes sense. Thank you very much. Mr. Billy Adam, waiting in the wings. One more quick question. Will the public input be published anonymously on the website to gauge public sentiment on the statement? And it notes it's a subject of national importance. They want to know, are these going to be anonymous comments and input, the feedback?
I'm going to take a little stab at that, if you don't mind, Simon, and it's taking off from one of my earlier comments on the appeals process. If you do take the opportunity to fill out the SurveyMonkey document, you'll see a little blurb in there that talks about the importance of attaching your name to it. And the reason we need your name and your contact information is because when objections to the plan are made, it goes through that appeals process that I mentioned earlier. And the only way the appeals tribunal can deal with those representations is if you're given the opportunity to appear. So that's the important part of giving your name and contact information. However, unless Richard or the director correct me, I do believe that all representations, whether they're anonymous or not, will be part of a record which will become public eventually, whether or not those representations are an objection that need to be heard by the appeals tribunal.
Thank you very much. Mr. Birianen?
Thank you very much, sir. It was nice to be associated with all the teenagers that were here, but I see somewhat an older person has joined because I'm only 19. Okay? I like when maturity comes beside me to keep me in order.
Question.
I'm only 19, yeah. Okay. In this little document that you have the wonderful words, sustainable development. You have a government, which I would have hoped would have been a democracy, but it's a cell-tocracy that has sold us out. That cell-tocracy laughs at anything about trying to protect the environment. The conservation law was so long in planning it came to be called the conversation law. Since then, the Legislative Assembly and business people want to tear that apart, what's left of it, because a lot of what the teeth were in it have been taken out. It come in like that, you know, when you lose your teeth and you try to eat anything, all you can have is more smush. Well, that's what it's down to now. And anything that they try to do to protect the environment gets criticized and ripped apart by some people in government. Now, yes, sir, so I'm sorry, I'm on a roll, okay?
Let's bring on the question.
Now, when you look in this document, on page 9, it's just that when I lose all my teeth, you lost all the foreshore, and you lost the perch beach that was there up until they dug out these because real estate agents wanted to sell people a beach where there wasn't a beach. So those idiots sold real estate, and they say, oh, we're going to dig it out and bring it up to the sand. So when they bring it up to the sand, what happens with the next wave? It washes all the perch beach that was from Pageant Beach all the way up to what we used to call the drain, which is where a Marriott is. You had a beach there that was about 15 feet high the whole way along. You lost it because of greed. You tried to sell something that wasn't. Okay, now, you talk about to promote sustainable development through effective and efficient use of land and natural resources. When they put in the sewage treatment plant for the West Bay Road, the standards for water discharge, sewage discharge, only looks at two things. One is turbidity, that's the cloudiness, and the other one is biological oxygen demand. That means when things go to break down, you don't want to take too much oxygen out of the water because it becomes anaerobic and it kills fish and wildlife. The world has moved on. Those standards were from cold northern European waters. We don't have sand erosion, we have sand abrasion. One grain of sand, a rock, a pebble, down to sand to nothing. You need a living environment to produce coral to break down in the Northwest as the pan shows.
Mr. Berry, I'm gonna...
No, I'm sorry, sir. The human pathogen that is in, this is our economy I love. I don't love the coral. I love what it does for me. The human pathogen that's all of our gut kills, and they've known it since the 1980s, and our government has done nothing about it. And those that are in charge know it. You have to clean up your SHIT, because that is what is killing.
Okay.
It's not it's not the it's not so much the global warming, because it died long time. The poncho's gone. So my question is,
there you go,
yes, what is going to put into action this statement that has dotted line connected to every damn thing on this? Is environment, because it's connected to everything Cayman. So what is going to do, or is that just a blah blah statement like the zonings? Because not one quarry in this country is in a correct zone.
Okay, we're gonna leave it
So what
there
is going to be done
to connect
to ensure, and will you allow and create laws that the people will get legal aid to take government to court when you violate the laws?
Okay, we're gonna hand that over. I mean, it was more or less a statement, but is there anything, any way we can respond in any way to Mr. Adam in the statement? 2 more
Sorry.
minutes.
I mean, we're going to keep away from the legal aid question.
Thank you, Mr. Adam.
Not in our wheelhouse, but I guess going back to your question, I mean, that is the essence of planning, is balancing competing interests. And that's what this plan seeks to do. I mean, as planners, our entire profession is geared towards how do we balance what, a segment of the community says, this is what's important to us. Another segment says, this is what's important to us. And it takes people to make a community, and everyone, so it's that balancing act. It's a very fine balancing act. And planning is one of those things that no matter what you do, someone's always upset. But that is what this plan is here to do, and this is why your input is so critical. And that's why we want to take it down to that area plan level, that community level, so that we can actually address within a community, when you say, this is what's important to us, we can craft a plan that addresses that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the question. And yeah,
Can I just add to that,
a reminder that the...
Simon, can I just add to that?
Yes, sorry.
Mr. Billy, page 25, on the infrastructure, wastewater, 5 and 6. Is that what you are hoping is going to happen?
Could you read it out for our listeners?
Encourage alternatives to individual septic tanks in order to minimize negative environmental impacts. And encourage the implementation, the latest technologies to minimize environmental impact of wastewater treatment practices. Is that what you were asking? Yes, sir. Okay, it's on page 25, sir.
They can't hear when the mic isn't by you. So I think Mr. Adam is saying how important
I don't think
feedback
you'll have
is.
anyone up here disagreeing with you.
Okay.
They've known it from the 1980s. They've done damn all about it.
Thank you for that. All right, we'll take a question now from Ms. Suzanne Bothwell.
Good night.
Good night.
I don't envy your what you all have to do here tonight and until the end of July. But so first of all, I am on the issue of enforcement. I just want to know, and it's not a judgment, how many enforcement officers does the planning department have at present?
We have 3.
Right. And I raise that question specifically more for the parliamentarians in the room. Because if we are going to be speaking of enhancing and updating our national development plan, the role of the plan, well, the role of government does not just stop at the permitting use and the regulation of development. It continues with respect to how the behaviors of the human being in the development after the fact. That is why Ms. Romelia can come in here tonight and talk about her myriad of frustrations of how people are treating the developments that were approved 30, 40 years ago, 5 years ago, a year ago. And they're breaking the laws, but we're expecting 3 planning enforcement officers to manage all 3 islands, not just one, of a population of over 80,000 people. So I hope, Haroon, being the director, that when you look at this and as you go through this process, you and your team are looking at what will it cost the planning department to do its job effectively, to actually adequately deal with the planning requirements and enforcement requirements, and to help identify those areas that are relevant to our society, important, but should be managed by other government departments, so that the residents of this country are not held impotent in resolving real, damaging quiet enjoyment issues to their quiet enjoyment, because every single government department they go to says, oh, well, it's not us and I can't do anything about it. And I just want to say lastly, if you're going to want to encourage residential development in central Georgetown, neighborhood commercial, and you're mixing uses, there's a balance to be struck. So how is that balance maintained if it is no one is overseeing what is happening and regulating it? So I leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think...
Can I make a comment there, other than asking Miss Suzanne if she wants to join us up here? This is a very serious issue, and in my humble opinion, and without consulting with my chairman or the director, we don't need a new development plan to fix the enforcement issues. I can tell you that 30 years, the first 11 or 12 of those, I worked for government in planning, so I was on the road, sometimes doing enforcements, even though that wasn't my assigned job. I think there was one enforcement officer at the time. Enforcement issues have always been issues. Even if the planning department increases the number of enforcement officers, the actual process for enforcements is the thing, in my opinion, that needs to change. And that's in the law and the regulations. And we can giddy up and go on that without waiting for the planning statement to be approved. And I have to say that as a member of the CPA, we sit and struggle with enforcement issues all the time, and we spend a lot of time literally grappling with it. We hear stories of why people have done after the fact. Some of them may be yarns, some of them may be true. But to sit and try to make a decision on whether we're going to engage the police to go and tear down someone's house but have to remove them first, those are pretty serious issues to deal with. And as a CPA member, I find that more difficult to deal with than when I was dealing with it as simply a staff person. What I'm suggesting is, this is only our second roadshow on this development plan. Enforcement issues didn't even come up in West Bay. They're coming up here, obviously a concern, huge concern. And we see that on our agendas. There's a lot of enforcement matters that need to be addressed in Georgetown. They need changes to the process in addition to additional resources. So use this opportunity if you want to make further comments on enforcement. Speak to your MPs. Continue complaining so planning can track them. Planning might not be able to deal with all of them because of resources. But the more we hear, the more we can do about it. But please stay engaged and help us fix the process, because it's not working right now.
Thank you very much. And just, it sounds like it's been a useful opportunity for people to communicate about the issues that they're facing. But just, we've got about 15 minutes left, and I'd just like to remind everyone we're here to talk about the future and about a responsible way forward for a brighter future. And we can't change the past, but we're here to take steps towards a sustainable plan for Cayman. And we have another person waiting to ask a question.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you very much for this process. Number 2, challenges and opportunities. It states adapting to a growing population. And I remember when the National Assessment of Living Conditions was done, the population grid, the graph itself was swollen in the middle. I can't imagine what it looks like now, because I have not really added to the population myself. So, anyways, this was somewhat answered earlier, but I kind of want to put another spin to it in terms of, because we know that the economic growth, does add to the population and is increasing it. But is there a national plan that is informing the planning statements based on this, adapting to a growing population? And are there any community assessments being done to inform whether the schools or community or civic engagement? Because I hear about the environment, and that's not my specialty, but my specialty is young people, community. Is there anything informing this plan based on those issues, social issues as such, that comes from our increasing population?
Good question. So you're using the census or other data to inform this process? Thank you. You can ask Mr. Richard Milam to answer.
We're debating, because I'm probably going to repeat what I said earlier, really, but only to add to that is just the breadth of resources that we incorporate within this planning process. So, yeah, taking data from, as I said, different government departments, agencies, anything that's in the private sector. Obviously, Economics and Statistics Office is a huge resource that informs this. So, yeah, a lot of information goes into it, but there is no set population plan that we can respond to.
Thank you for that. So, anonymous question from the floor. How long do you anticipate each area plan to take? Will you be doing one at a time or creating committees to tackle all at once? Richard?
So the intention is that we would undertake 2 area plans every year. So an area plan is going to be a huge undertaking. It's the consultation with yourselves. It's prior to that, it's the research. It then would have the formal adoption process that this document has. So it's not that we can just turn them around very quickly, but I feel that we currently have the resources to undertake 2 per year. We'd probably try to time them so that they're cascading, so that we're coming to you, reaching out to get your input, on two different area plans. And that would take us then to complete the whole set of area plans within that 5-year review process. And the intention is that we get to the end of that and we can use whatever key performance indicators are necessary to check if they're working. Because we might find that we've prepared an area plan and actually that the requirements and the regulations within that don't quite meet the needs of that community, and we need to revisit it. And so this is very much continuous planning. We very much do not want this to only be revisited in 25 years' time. We need to keep on top of this.
Thanks, Mr. Milam. Next question, please.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jared McGill. I'm the former Public Lands Commission Secretary, so I can understand everybody's frustration. What I had to ask was each head of department included in this statement? Was it sent to the Director of Agriculture, the Chief Inspector of the Public Lands Commission, the Director of Environment? Because I'm seeing a lot of overlap. But to my colleague's point, and another person said, to be honest, if you have 3 inspectors for 80,000 people and you have about an average, let's say, give or take, 15 applications coming through, separate and apart, people building up illegally, you think that would really help with enforcement? It wouldn't. I can tell you Public Lands Commission is grossly underfunded, and we only have 5 inspectors for 3 islands. and we have over 200 odd public shoreline access points. So when you really look at it, it is a resource issue, because if your inspectors aren't able to catch a person breaking the law, you can't really deal with them. That's why you're dealing with them after the fact. And that's what he was raising. It needs to be preventative. People shouldn't be coming here and breaking the laws and then you give them a chance to revamp it and refix it. Because I've seen some of those OPSs that have come to my department and they really could have been avoided, but they weren't, because it's an after the fact case. So we say we are compliant driven, but we're not compliant enforcers. We need to mean what we say and say what we mean. And in the words of Dr. Steve, we shouldn't be rubbing these two mouths when people come here. They need to follow the laws. That's why we have a planning statement, because people aren't following the laws at the end of the day. So my question is fundamentally and substantially, if it wasn't interpreted or able to be comprehended, did you send this planning statement to all the stakeholder government agencies, departments, so that they themselves too could give their feedback to say, well, you got something right here, but not right here?
Thanks for the question.
I'm going to take a first stab at that. We did have a thought about doing that exact consultation, Mr. Jared, with other departments. But again, back to the legal requirements and the process, we are making all the consultation public and transparent. So we're hoping that all departments and agencies, and we're happy to meet with them as well as part of the consultation process. But the idea is to get their input here. And just to add to the point on enforcement, because you were covering two very important issues, Jared. On the enforcement issue, resources, like I said before, resources isn't just the issue. And I know enforcement processes are different across agencies, but we really need to get more resources and better process.
Thank you very much. And I imagine some of it, again, boils down to budgets. And Mr. Haroon, you'd like to jump in?
Well, I just want to say, in terms of a tremendous amount of information, including individual various strategic plans from departments, et cetera, came into the formation of this document. So that did form a part of what we see here today. As it relates to budgeting, we have that conversation every finance committee. Again, like everything else, it's a balancing act. Somebody's interested in compliance and enforcement. Someone's interested in getting their permit out in the shortest period of time. Someone's interested in getting planning permission in the shortest period of time. And again, it's a balancing act. We prioritize the interests of everyone.
Okay, hold on. We have to have the microphone for people to hear. I just want to remind everybody at this point, though, just remind people about the opportunity to provide your feedback, and it's... And so, you know, in order to maintain and enhance our economy, our social fabric, our environment, we're trying to put through the new development plan, which hasn't been updated since 1997. So an opportunity to provide your feedback, go along to www.plancayman.ky or provide your feedback at plancayman@gov.ky. And we recognize it's an emotional topic. The people on the podium, I think, are doing an excellent job. And we're trying to stay respectful of each other and encourage open dialogue at the same time. And so this time we're going to invite Mr. Danny Warren to ask a question.
Good evening. I personally believe that humans are a part of the environment, and so we should speak about it as if they're separate. And on a separate note, thinking about long-term strategy and planning, I find it amazing that people in society push to mow down thousands of acres of trees to put up solar panels to save the environment. Now I'm a little slow, so I need you to help me with that. I think we need to find a more sustainable way to provide energy. I think part of the frustration that people have with moving things forward is that politicians have failed to plan the transportation network adequately. And as a result of that, you are on the streets every morning and you're frustrated because you can't get to where you need to go on time. Something needs to be done about that, because I think that the infrastructure, rightly done, precedes the development. So if you're going to build hospitals, schools, or whatever, if you can't wait until houses and those buildings are done to then build the roads. I think you should do it the other way around. And I think that will ease some of the pressure that society is feeling in getting this process done. And I just wish that we would take seriously sustainability, not talking points, not irrational comments, sustainability. It has to actually be sustainable.
Thank you very much, Mr. Warren. We got 7 minutes left. Is that a statement, or did you? It was kind of a statement. So we've got a couple of questions. Just a reminder, there's more opportunities to attend these consultations. We've got another one coming up on Monday, June 10th at Savannah United Church. There's another one on June 13th, Boddentown at the Boddentown Church of God, July 4th, North Side at Miss Edna Moyle Primary School, July 8th, Cayman Brack, Aston Ruddy Center, Little Cayman on July 15th at the Little Cayman Beach Resort, and East End, William Allen McLaughlin Civic Center on July 18th, and July 18th as well. We're going to have a virtual consultation at a different time, which will provide the details. We have a couple more questions that have come in online. I see, Ms. Tara, you're coming back for another question. Let me just give the opportunities. Mr. Steve McField? Okay, we'll just, can we bring the mic over to Mr. McField? He's sitting right here.
Good evening.
Dr. McField.
What I would like to remind everybody here is that a little history. The first development plan in 1977, I was a young Crown Counsel in the government in the old glass house on the 3rd floor. And I remember the plan had a scenic road from Pedro Castle all the way down to Boddentown. And when the politicians discovered that the scenic road was not going to allow them and their customers, some of them were in real estate, to build on the seaside, they went down to the Legislative Assembly and they changed the development plan by a resolution, and they moved the scenic road to where it is now and allowed all of those homes to be built in Beach Bay on the, that affected the view that people had, the intention of the scenic road to view the sea. So I have been through all of this before, and I have all the flower rewards and so forth. And I have seen what happened at 7 Mile Beach, and I've seen what happened elsewhere, because I'm an old hand, and nothing really changes unless there is a way for the people to decide on those things themselves, because you can't give those things to politicians, because it's not the voters who wins the election, it's the donors who wins the election. And it's the donors who are destroying the country. So I would like to see something in the plan, in this stage of the plan, where those sensitive areas that you talk about cannot be touched. And there should be some sort of entrenchment in the law that gives the people some sort of referendum instead of the politicians to change it, because it's going to be like this forever, and they'll always find a way because they have the money, because people support them, and the local Caymanian people don't have any money. They don't have any savings anymore. we became from a middle class now to an underclass, a minority in our own country. And if there is no entrenchment to give the people themselves some sort of say in how the development plan is going to be changed and so forth, there's going to be the same old story. You know, like the sound? It's the same old story. We fight for love and glory.
Thank you very much for that contribution. So we are coming to an end now of this session. As I said, there is a number more coming. We do have, I think that comment could fairly go to the members of parliament and the representatives of the in the districts and the communities. And I must say, I do appreciate seeing the Honourable Kenneth Bryan here tonight, as well as the Leader of the Opposition, Honourable Roy McTaggart. And thank you so much for all the people who came out. There's going to be a number more opportunities for feedback, including a virtual opportunity on July 18th. And we are going to be in a number of other communities coming up, Savannah on June 10th. So please encourage your friends, your colleagues, and your family members who are not present tonight to provide written expressions of feedback at Plan Cayman, at gov.ky, or any of the Central Planning Authority offices. You can also drop off your comment at the Planning Department booth on the ground floor of the Government Administration Building. Please fill out that feedback form. I'll just offer a comment quickly before we go to the members of the panel. If you wish to make any quick closing statements, we've got a couple of minutes before Radio Cayman winds it up. But again, thank you all for coming out. Thank you for the tough job we had here on the podium. I think they did amazing considering there was a lot of emotion.
I just want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I'd like to see this continue. I'd like you to read the document if you haven't had a chance. If you want to come back and ask more questions, the meetings will be there. Please come out and ask questions. And I would like to hope that Mr. Markfield's prophecy tonight is not the case. I hope that we can get the feedback from the people, then we get a development plan that suits the needs of the people, and it can get approved in Parliament. Maybe I'm an optimist, but I'm not going to give up until I'm going to try and achieve that. We're all going to try and achieve that, okay? So thank you for coming out, and good night, and we hope to see you at another meeting in the future.
Thank you, too.
That concludes Radio Cayman's live broadcast of tonight's Plan Cayman meeting as it was held in the Georgetown Constitution Hall. Once again, that was a live broadcast from Georgetown Plan Cayman. You can go to the website of plancayman.ky for all the information that was discussed tonight.
Information, entertainment.